Once again, we have a lot of things to cover as we make our trek down the road. Andrew Rich is going to join us a little bit later. He's been involved with Colin Powell for a long, long time. And of course, we lost this American hero. We're going to make sure you know what the statements of the presidents were. That's right, every living president. When I say every, I mean every. And the last president, I'm going to make sure you know what his statement was. It might shock you what that statement was. Also, Rusty Halverson's going to join us. We'll talk a little ag forecasting and where we see the markets going. But first, we start with a man that covered in the news for the Minnesota News Network the announcement from Governor Walz that he's going to run again. He's going to put that name on the ballot again, and he wants to remain governor of the great state of Minnesota, and that's Tim Walz. Let's get to Bill Werner about that. Bill, good to have you back on a trek down the road.
Good to be back again, Joel. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. No surprise that that Governor Walz announced he's running for re-election. It would have been a jaw dropper if he had said, "No, I decided I'm not going to." But no, he's in the race, and he'll be the candidate, obviously, Democrats' candidate.
You say no surprise to me. That means that he knows something that we might not. Because the only reason politicians who want a job get out of running for a job is because they know they can't keep the job. And so we'll get to that in just a little bit. But we were mentioning off air that there's two C's that are going to play out in this race. Why don't you explain that to the folks?
Yeah, the first one is COVID, and that's one that all of us are more familiar with than we want to be, for sure. We'd like to not be familiar with COVID anymore. And the other is crime. And the COVID issue is a real up in the air kind of thing. Is this the final surge we're going to see? Are there going to be other surges? Do we get into a situation where it's such a dire situation where the governor has to declare a peacetime emergency again and get take emergency powers back, right, and issue executive orders? That would create a firestorm for Tim Walz politically. So I think, from a political standpoint, aside from what I'm sure is his concern about keeping Minnesotans safe, right, and saving as many lives as possible. But aside from that, the political consideration is he's got to try to do everything that he can to avoid having to go there where you have a real dire situation with not enough hospital beds and a lot of cases and even more people dying than that are dying, because politically that would be really, really difficult for him. The Republicans are going to hammer him anyway, but that will even make it worse.
Coming from the rural area, it seems that there's two. You just mentioned even more people dying, not enough beds, a lot of things that are going on in that fight against COVID, and it seems as though as leader of a state you can't win. You've got individuals out there who think that he hasn't taken a hard enough stance. And that he hasn't shut the state down long enough and soon enough. And then you've got individuals out there near where I live who believe that he was way too firm when it came to COVID. And so how does he spin, or I shouldn't say spin, that's maybe the wrong way to describe it, but how does he make his case that he did a good job of managing COVID?
That's a tough job for him to do. It's all dependent on what happens with something that is somewhat out of his control, out of all of our control, and that's COVID, right? I think he's probably in the best position. I mean, I hate to say this, but I think he's probably in the best position if what he's doing now is proposing some measures that hopefully would throttle back any resurgence of COVID, right? And if he's public about that and says, I'm taking these measures, I'm proposing, let's vaccinate teachers, let's require vaccinations for teachers, let's require testing of teachers and school staff. And if the Republicans say, no, absolutely not, we're not going to do that. And if COVID resurges again, then he's in a stronger position, you see. But if not, then he's in the position where folks say, well, he's just trying to exercise his executive authority and overreach. So I'm probably not answering your question, Joel, but a lot of it, I would think that his strategy in this and his political strategy is dependent on the ebb and flow of the COVID pandemic, and who knows, maybe we're going out of that, or maybe we're not. We're hoping that maybe that this surge is damping down based on what's happening on the coasts. We'll have to see.
Well, where your argument might be right is you always think of the political commercials that could follow. You can talk about people that are immune deficient that say that without the strong measures that Governor Walz took, they might not be here. You can always talk about the extreme measures that the governor took, where you've actually seen families who are thankful that he took those so that they didn't go through the same experience he did. I mean, but you go to outstate Minnesota, which I think a lot of the people in outstate Minnesota might be the numbers of individuals not vaccinated. You go to outstate Minnesota, I mean, I ride Harley, so I went into a bar on one of my treks through Minnesota. They got can koozies just blasting the governor. Some of what they say on those can koozies about their freedoms and Governor Walz aren't something he is going to use in a campaign ad.
And it's a different situation. And I mean, I certainly acknowledge and respect that point of view, just, as much as the other point of view. As a reporter, I have to, I have an opinion about it, per se. And it's a different situation in rural areas, just in terms of population density and various other factors. And so, yes, that plays in. It's ironic that Tim Walz talking about one Minnesota, and that's been obviously the watchword or hallmark of his last campaign, and he's going to use it again this time, it looks like. Well, to say we're one state, that's maybe as difficult as saying that we're one union in terms of the United States of America, right? Mm-hmm. But there's things that hold us together regardless of that, and I think hopefully we all realize that we're probably better off being together than being all divided up.
Let's go to the crime issue, which I think you nailed as well. That's going to be one of the big issues, because if you look at where the governor's going to rely upon to get the votes he needs to get reelected, a lot of that's going to have to come from the metro area. And there's a lot of people in the metro area who feel that crime has gotten out of control. Now, the governor might have not had any role in being able to stem that tide, but he is the leader of the state of Minnesota. And so how does that play out for him? Do you think that those same votes are there in communities that normally would vote overwhelmingly for him?
That a real telling poll, not all that long ago, about the Minneapolis quote, defund the police amendment, right? And we all know that's an oversimplification, okay? But everybody knows what I'm talking about when I'm saying that, okay? It found more support for that amendment among white voters on the kind of more the edges of the further reaches of Minneapolis, right? The economically better off areas. More support among those folks for that defund the police amendment than among the communities of color, who have been the victims of people like Derek Chauvin. He's convicted of murder, so I think we can say that. Okay, and you think to yourself, well, what? They don't support that? Well, the reason, but then you think about it twice and a little bit closer, and you say, well, no, but the reason they don't support it is because not only are they the victim of bad cops, hence the kind of the genesis of the defund the police movement, right? Okay, but they're victims of criminals. And so therefore, they're saying, well, my personal safety, yeah, we got some bad apples around like Derek Chauvin, but I can't walk down the street and there are gunshots and these kind of things, right? So therefore, what does that tell you? The traditional constituencies, we don't know where they are. The Democrats don't really know where they are. My guess is, and I'd probably be called wrong on this. Well, let me back up. A lot of analysts say this battle is going to be in the suburbs of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Probably will be. Has been in recent gubernatorial elections on different issues. Battle probably be there. My guess is it's probably going to be in the inner ring suburbs of Minneapolis and St. Paul. I'm talking about communities like the Brooklyn Centers, the Robbinsdales, Columbia Heights, maybe parts of Fridley, maybe parts of Richfield, the suburbs that are economically different from, say, Minnetonkas, Andovers, Chanhassen, Woodbury, those kind of further out suburbs, right? Okay. The ones where you're seeing a spillover of crime from the central city, right? As an example, the Dante Wright shooting. Okay, now that's maybe a different situation than Derek Chauvin, but it's emblematic of it. And so therefore, those folks, are they going to go more with? Are they going to go the Democratic side, or might enough of them say, well, geez, I mean, I got gunshots right in the neighborhood here. We do have to crack down on this, and they line up better with the Republicans. Would they do that in the race for governor? Or would they maybe elect a state representative and change the balance of the legislature and therefore affect the governor's power, whether it be Tim Walz or the Republican who wins? There's all sorts of factors there, but I think we really need to watch the inner ring suburbs of Minneapolis, Minneapolis in particular, more so than St. Paul.
I don't get surprised by polls very often anymore after all my time around politics. That poll shocked me when you just said it.
That's one of you go, yeah. Now, hold on a second. And then you look at it again and you say, oh, yeah, because all other things being aside, okay, the police reform and the crime issue are intertwined, okay? But when push comes to shove, if you're worried that somebody's going to fire a gun at you when you go down the street, right, that's going to be of more concern to you than whether you got a bad apple cop beating black men. I'm sorry, and I'm not saying I agree with one or the other, okay? But right,
it's true.
Each of us are going to say, "Holy cow! I'm threatened." That's got to be the first thing in my mind.
Right. It's true.
Therefore, that's why the Republicans have such a strong position on this, and why they can be hardline and say, "Yeah, we're gonna put the criminals, sentence them according to the, we're gonna be tough on them and put them in jail and not let them out early, and we want more police on the streets." And people say that's oversimplified. And the governor said last night, yeah, well, we're human beings. We can have two thoughts in our mind at a time. One of them is, yes, we're going to crack down on crime. And the other is to get bad apple cops off of the forces. Yes, but that's more complicated. And if a person feels their personal safety threatened, what are they going to say? They're going to say, well, I got to have I got to be safe before anything else. Otherwise, it's all academic.
Well, so, one last question, Bill.
Yeah.
Before I run out of time here, there are people in Minnesota that are political figures that are incredibly popular in Minnesota right now, one being Amy Klobuchar. And, Al Franken's star is rising again, as you know, and I think Tina Smith's base is solid. How big of a role could those three play in a race like this if they come out full barrel for Tim Walz?
I think, well, that will help. But I think what really is more important than anything, and what I keyed into the other day last night was, who was appearing with the rally, the virtual rally that Tim Walz and Peggy Flanagan held, was Ken Martin, the chairman of the Minnesota Democratic Party and also the co-chair of the Democratic National Committee. Okay, that's the guy who, of all those people, has the pull to ask the White House to bring Joe Biden in. Okay, and so therefore, I think that's probably the level that you have to have.
Yeah.
Not to minimize Amy Klobuchar, not to minimize Tina Smith, okay? But I think that's why, and again, nobody told me this, but I think that's why Ken Martin was involved in that virtual rally last night.
Bill, I love these conversations. Thanks for taking the time.
Always good being with you. Take good care, okay, everybody? Be safe.
You too.